Hello, it is Wednesday, the 27th of October, 2021, the last Wednesday of this month. Next month, we will be into November. Can you believe how quickly this year has transpired? So many events, so many things. And literally, we're sitting on, what, 8 more weeks of the year? Less than 100 days till the Christmas season. And those New Year's goals that we set at the beginning of the year, how are we doing on those? And people sit there and they make these goals or these ideas or these affirmations about what they're going to accomplish this year. It's possible to accomplish many of them still if you focus on it. But oftentimes for myself, I find that goals I set are not goals I wish to accomplish. They are virtue signaling. They sound really good to other people, and somehow I think that transfers that I must look pretty good. But the truth of the matter is, it is the goals that I want to do, the ones that I'm internally driven to do, the ones that my why is huge, are the ones that get accomplished even when life has thrown a lot of obstacles in my way. And so, having said that, I belong to a really wonderful group on Facebook, and I would encourage anybody who would like to join up with it. It's a gratitude group. It's called Gratitude, Inspiration, and Happiness. Oftentimes, our happiness and our gratitude are so interrelated. And inspiration is a byproduct of this, in my opinion. When we are grateful for things, we attract more things for which we are grateful. When we are inspired, we have a sense of gratification that comes from the inspiration, but that inspiration leads us down a path, as long as our drive remains true, to an accomplishment and therefore an increase in our happiness. To be happy, you don't need a lot of things. The most basic commodity I believe people need in order to be happy is to make the choice to be happy. I liked what the 16th president of the United States said, Abraham Lincoln. People are about as happy as they want to be. Choose to be happy. But not only is happiness a choice, things like success are a choice. When I was a young man, this was the story we were told. Go to school, study hard, get good grades, go to university, get a good education, get a great job with a good company, and you're set for life. Well, people really believed that in the 60s and the 70s, and even into the 80s. But something happened, and that happened is reality. Companies had no sense of loyalty to their employees. Education was oftentimes discounted. It was more about who do you know. People who oftentimes had the job title and the big paycheck did it by harming other people in order to achieve. It was, a world where you were working with people who are literally sharks. They were willing to sabotage you so that they would look better for their own personal success, despite the fact they were pretty much incompetent. And that concept called the Peter Principle came up, where it was people will rise to the level of their greatest incompetence. And people who knew, could do, did the job very well, were oftentimes suppressed so that the manager could keep them there to make the manager look good for their next promotion, as opposed to promoting others. I read something very interesting today by Jay Franze of Jay Franze and Friends. Jay was a guest on Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets a while back, and quite frankly, I found Jay to be quite profound in many of his comments that he would make. And one of the things he talked about is, the people you hire should be experts in the limited field that they are working in. And the manager who chooses not to have people work for them that are smarter than them are doomed for failure. And when I read that, that just brought back into my own mind when I was a young master's degree psychologist who suddenly had the power to start hiring people. Now, I can't say I was a psychologist with a master's degree. I was working in the field of psychology. I was oftentimes like a department head or something else, but they would say, hey, Gary, your team needs to expand. You need to hire a psychologist, or so-and-so's leaving the company. You need to bring in somebody to replace them and train them up, etc. And I would go through the process of selecting people, and there were all these people who were getting resumes into me, and human resources would send like maybe 25 resumes for you to look at, and then you'd have to select it down to 7 that you wanted to interview. They would get approved by somebody, and then you'd make the phone call, bring them in, and you had to. That was the thing that was strange to me. No matter who I worked for, it was always you had to have a pool of 7 people that you were interviewing. Very, very strange to me. Well, I selected 7 people that were really good on paper, and I sent them back. And what I got the first time that I sent them back was a phone call from Human Resources said, Gary, 4 of the people you selected have PhDs. Are you sure you want to hire PhDs? Because it's only a bachelor degree entry level. And my thought was, why not? They've got tons of experience. They're just getting out of school. The market is kind of flooded. These people are desperate for a job. It isn't like they're going to come and get a job and try to leave within 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to be here for a while, and they have so much knowledge, so much expertise that they can only enhance us. I'm not looking for somebody that just wants to cling to a job. I don't want somebody that they just got themselves a bachelor's degree and they're really happy and that's all they ever want to have. And so I said, no, I want to interview them. I want to interview them all. And you would be surprised, because when you start interviewing people, they're all prepared for specific questions that are being asked. And it was interesting because the company would send you a list of potential questions. And one of the things that I always found very interesting was you had to ask everybody the same questions. So you had like an hour to interview people. You had about 30 minutes of questions that you could ask once you kind of built a little bit of rapport, kind of clarified whatever things on the CV or the resume that you didn't quite understand, that weren't clear, maybe acknowledge who they were taught by, etc., because they may have been very powerful influences in your own life. Found out a little bit about their history and move on. But these questions that you would have to ask all 7 people kind of disturbed me, because if the question wasn't asked to everybody, it was called a bogus interview. You couldn't hire anybody because you asked something outside of it. So I always like to ask 3 questions in the interview. Didn't matter how many questions we had, but I always had 3 that were not on their list of questions. But as long as I asked everybody the same 3 questions, it was okay. The one question I like to start off first is, you have a glass of water and it's filled to the halfway mark. How do you describe it? Half full or half empty? Basically, because I have a belief that one personality type will say, I'm a very positive person, and the other one is I'm kind of a negative person. One's optimistic, one's pessimistic. One person will say the glass is half full, and the other person will say it's half empty. It's just the nature of the beast. And if you want to have optimistic people, you pick the one that gave you the optimistic answer and you move them ahead. The second question I had was, if you couldn't be a counselor or whatever the position was, what would you rather do? And I asked that question because, number one, I wanted to eliminate the people who said, oh, if I couldn't do this job, I mean, I was born to do this job. I couldn't imagine anything else. I think I'd just go out and commit suicide because I can't do anything else. And I just wanted to get rid of those people because I saw them not having the ability to think outside the box, not possibility thinkers, etc. Those things that I wanted to throw out. The third question I like to ask is, when you're at work today in your normal job, and you've been talking to 2 or 3 of your coworkers, and you leave the conversation to go off to do something else, what do they say about you behind your back? Oh my goodness. I had people who broke down and cried on that question. I had people who got up in the middle of at that point in the interview and say, I won't answer that question. I guess the interview's over. They walked out. But I asked everybody the same questions, and that was always the last question because it had such a visceral reaction from people. But when I took this panel where I had like the 3 people who had PhDs, or 4 people who had the PhDs, and I had basically the rest were all master level people who were prepared at a master's level. And on top of all of that, I did have 2 positions available. I ended up hiring a lady with a doctorate, and I ended up hiring a man who just had a bachelor's degree out of that pool. No, but a bachelor's degree, but was waiting for his master's board. So, he was master's prepared. He was just waiting to do his thesis board. And when he completed the thesis board, he would be a master's degree person. So he'd written his project and things. And he was the guy that I hired. And when I sent those names over to human resources, they said, are you sure you want the PhD? I said, well, why would I not want somebody? Well, they're smarter than you probably. They're probably better than you. And I said, great. don't make me look really good. You know, well, are you sure you want to hire the guy that's still got a bachelor's degree? He said he'll have his master's by the end of the month. I said, yeah, I want to bring him on board. And they said, well, he could be a lot of work for you. And I said, that is why you hired me. I'm here to make sure that I can get the best performance out of the people. And if I need to, I can have the PhD work with the new guy to help me get him there. Because I really have the confidence that this woman could do it with the PhD. She was really, really like the brightest bulb on the tree of all the candidates that we had in front of us. Well, to make this long story somewhat short, the truth of the matter was a year later, I ended up leaving. The PhD ended up taking my position, despite the fact she was far lower in seniority from other people, but they all agreed she should be leading the team if Gary isn't there. So it was, you had this team, you had this sense of cohesion, you had this sense of loyalty that was going on in the whole matrix. And the young man that I brought in, that was still a bachelor's degree, just getting his master's there shortly thereafter, was really such an inspirational component to the team and a big out-of-the-box thinker. And through him, he came in with some really great ideas that allowed us to expand what we were doing, making greater inroads into the community that we were serving with no additional costing to anybody in time, efforts, strategies, etc. So everything works out a lot better. I would call that extremely successful. My employer thought that we were a gold mine team and kept pointing to everybody, why can't you be like them? And I know what the difference was. I even told the CEO of the company when I walked out what the difference was. And she really looked at me and said, you're right. And here's the difference. I was not afraid to hire my replacement. And they are. All the other teams who didn't want to hire anybody better, anybody who would challenge their position in the pecking order, they didn't want that because they were too fragile. Me, I always felt like I'm never going to be staying anywhere. And my history was I was always progressing to a better job, better position, more money, etc. Because I used to think money and position was what success was all about. And it really wasn't. It wasn't at all. So many more components to what makes a good, happy, successful life than those two indicators. But I literally was not afraid to hire the person that could replace me. In fact, everybody I hired, I wanted them capable to walk into my role the next day, should I decide not to come back that night. So here we go. The world needs successful people to move ahead. The world needs people who have a great deal of gratitude, inspiration, and happiness. I can tell you that in my life, the most unhappy people I ever met were the employees of unhappy people. People who were supervised by unhappy people. The happiest people I came across were the employees or the individuals supervised by people who had total gratitude, who were inspirational, and who had this servant leader concept down pat. I had worked several different jobs before I came across a man who was truly a servant leader. I was running a team We were in a satellite operation. We hardly ever saw anybody from the main office. And when they did, they just wanted to come and tell us what they thought we were doing wrong. We ended up getting a new administrator over us, um, running the company actually. And he called me up and told me that he would like to come and spend a day with me. And what day would I be available or would best suit for myself and the team? And I told him, well, this would day we all are here. We have our team meeting, etc. He says, I'd love to be there. He flew in to this little community that I was in. He had a private plane. I was really quite impressed with the fact that he owned his own personal plane. But he flew his little plane into the airport. I drove down, picked him up in the morning, drove him to my office. And in the car, he says, now, Gary, I'm here to serve you. Can you tell me how I can help you today? Are there any meetings that you have today where you have something where I can really back you up, where I can support you? Is there anything today where I could help or assist? Is there any groups that are going on where I could jump in and be a participant on it? I didn't know where this guy was coming from. I thought he was going after me. I was like, what is his game? What is his plan? I had never had anybody do this. Usually I've had them tell me, this is what I expect to you. This is what I'm going to be telling the team today. This is what's going to be happening. This is what you will be doing. None of that from this guy. It was just like, how can I help? How can I serve you? How can I be a better part of what's going on? How can I build you up in front of your own team? I was totally unprepared for it. We went back to my office, we sat down, we had a bit of a talk, we had a bit of a chat. Now, again, I am a person of spiritual background, and he did something in my business environment that totally blew me out of the water, because as we finished talking, and I said, well, I am going to have this meeting today with the team. We are going to talk about this policy that came down from, the main office. And it would be nice if you would explain to us, if I give you a few minutes, if you could just explain the reasoning behind it so that we have a greater sense of acceptance of what's going on. He said, I'd be happy to do that. And not only that, but I will express that I truly am supporting the team here and how I'm going to move that on. I said, okay, that's great. And he says, now, that's just a meeting today, but you have 4 or 5 different groups. Is there any way I can participate in those groups? I am a therapist. I have a background on it. Yeah, we'll put you in to help these people and these people. That way you can meet more of the team members in their interaction. At the end of the day, when I took him to the airport, the feedback I got from my team on the side was, this guy's fantastic. He's great. Oh my gosh, he came into our team and he was so humble. He was so inventive in some of the things that he suggested. I learned so much from him today. He was such a mentor. He was such a teacher to me. But here is what I want to tell you is when we got done in that little morning meeting between he and I said, well, everybody's going to be coming in and we're going to be kicking off pretty quickly. He says, Gary, would you mind if I prayed for us today? Well, I'm not opposed to prayer. And I believe in the power of prayer. I don't have a problem with it. I've never had a boss in a psychological setting say that's what they wanted to do. And I said, yes. And so we prayed. He was the voice. It was a beautiful, short, concise prayer. And at the end of the day, when I was taking him back to the airport where he can get onto his own plane and fly away, he talked to me about, not like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? It was his comments about the team, his comments about me, and everything was uplifting, was inspiring. And then he got ready to leave the car and he turned around to me and he says, Gary, he says, you're the first person in this company, when I suggested, that I'd like to say a prayer with them, said, okay. Said everybody else gets very uncomfortable. They look around. They say, well, there's a difference between church and state and all this kind of stuff. He says, you just said, okay. He says, I really appreciated that. And I said, well, boss, before you get in the plane, can I just pray for your safe return? He said, yes. And I expressed my love for him in this prayer because I really appreciated how he had treated the team and how he had treated me. And when he was flying away, I realized this man is successful. He is successful because he has learned how to serve the people he leads. And because he knows how to serve the people he leads, he's flying home in his own airplane. Let that sink in. Learn to be grateful. Be inspiring. Allow yourself to be inspired by things and you will become inspiring. And choose to be happy. Choose to be happy no matter what your circumstances are. Today, a friend of mine posted in Facebook a passage about abundance. Let me tell you something about abundance is true. Abundance never exists in your bank account in the beginning. Abundance is up here in your mind. When you can see abundance there, when you can live abundantly there, when you can grasp and take everything in this world with abundance at all times and express gratitude for the abundance that is yet to be seen by the world and know it is coming. When you achieve that state, you will suddenly look in your bank account and see the abundance there. Everything happens because when you believe it, then you'll see it. Thank you so much for attending this week's Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets episode of Golden Nugget Nation. I'm so grateful for the nation, so grateful for those people who have joined the group, so grateful for the people who watch these messages. I hope they inspire you. I hope they give you a sense of who you are, who you should accept yourself as. Do not hide your light under a bushel when a thimble will do. Just take the thimble off, take the bushel off, let the world see your light. Your playing small has not served anyone. It is time to go boldly into those dark places and be the light you are. Because a candle in a cave really does appear to give a lot of light. Just go and do it. I'm proud of you. Thank you so much and have a glorious week and the rest of this wonderful month. Enjoy Halloween if you're into that. See you later. Bye.